and we were all craving a bite. We asked no questions. We just simply clamped our teeth into it and passed it on. Perhaps this is common to every generation. Maybe it's the necessary rite of passage of sorts that transitions adolescence into some weird pre-adulthood limbo where your exposure makes you a tad more mature than you should be at a given age. And so I can't to this day explain what it was. Maybe it was the mixture of teenage angst and fickle curiosity, but it was the early 90s and hip-hop music was still emerging as a cultural force. Fashion during that time had this really strange allure on teenagers that's not similar to what it is today. Goose-down jackets were the outerwear in demand. Chunky gold chains were the must-have accessory. I mean, they had to be as big as your head. Adidas with fat laces and Nike Air Jordans reigned as the king of footwear, and baggy clothing had just become in vogue. And I remember this burning desire that I had as a young person to possess all those things. And I also remember how the introduction of guns to the city streets and middle-class neighborhoods of New York changed our reality. I can still remember watching the news and hearing about young men that were shot for their goose-down jackets. Images of mothers weeping and families nestling close together as they mourn the death of a son still tattoo my mind, as they mourn the death of their son who was shot in a New York City high school hallway because somehow he inadvertently made the mistake of stepping on somebody's brand new Nike Air Jordans. It's easy for me to recollect the emergence of gangs and crews and posses that link themselves together to represent their neighborhoods. I remember losing my innocence in merely one summer. So suddenly, now familiar with violence in a small breath of time, instead of talking about the newest fashion trends and video games, we talked about various weapons. Everyone had this desire to acquire the newest, the hottest trend or item or clothing, and we'd do almost anything to get it. My suburban neighborhood was being overtaken by this underground movement that was soaring on the wings of suspicion. It was fueled by the availability of drugs, and it was advocated by the marketed misguidance of the media. And so it's not hard for me to recall what it felt like to be around people that carried guns. I remember the sense of security and the sense of power and the sense of danger all blended together. And I liked how it felt when a threatening situation could be reversed by the introduction of a weapon. And so on this one morning, peer pressure had persuaded me to listen to a friend that had a gun. I was 15. I was enamored by dudes that were older than me, but thought I was somewhat cool enough to hang around them. Their term of endearment for me was Shorty. And I don't know where they got a nickname like that. If you're going to give somebody a nickname, it should be, you know, proportionate to something about them. But they used to call me Shorty. He asked me to carry his gun in my knapsack while he went to take care of some business, and so I quickly tucked the .22 caliber in between my spiral notebooks and made my way into Harry S. Truman High School in the Bronx. And I felt power. I felt invincible. And as I went through the doorway, I was alarmed to see police officers and metal detectors at the entryway of the school, and so I froze. Suspended animation ensued. We never had metal detectors at our school, but for some reason that day we had police and metal detectors right at the front of the school, and I didn't know what to do. If they searched my bags, I would have been arrested. And here I was, this kid with this somewhat Pentecostal upbringing, though I didn't have the Holy Ghost at the time, encountering what could have been a life-altering situation. I spun around slowly and made my way back out of the high school. No one seemed to question my abrupt behavior, and I was in search. But you see, schools all over New York City were changing during that time. As a matter of fact, schools all over North America were changing during that time. We were collectively losing our innocence. And still, to this day, I can't forget the feeling of power and invincibility that I had simply because I was carrying a weapon.